Hello and welcome to the 4Corners podcast. I am Brad, joined by Matt and Shad. This is the first time in, I think, 3 weeks that the three of us have been on the show together.
It's the summer. It's vacations, other things happening.
Yeah,
Vacation and things.
when we were just a podcast, this was really easy to
Mm.
bypass because we just double record. But now that we have a live element, it's a little more difficult. So, Mr. Beefy kindly stepped in one week. Then it was Matt and I one week, and then Crow from the Black Pants Legion filled in last week. So, how are you doing this evening, gentlemen?
Good. It's are you are you guys surviving the heat dome?
It
I'm
has
I'm staying out of it as much as possible.
it hasn't been like super hot here for a couple since Friday, I think.
Oh, it today. Actually, yesterday. Yesterday was almost like beautiful spring weather because it was only like a high of like 86, whereas it's pretty much just been like in the 90s or close to 100. And I think like it's supposed to be like 95 tomorrow, and then it go down again to like the 80s, and then back to like the 90s. So my family's actually going to the beach for the 4th, and it's somehow actually going to be cooler in the beach, like right next, like no tree cover, none of that, no shade of the beach, but it's somehow going to be cooler there than it is actually right here in DC area.
I
So I
went
don't know.
I went first week of November to Myrtle Beach last year, and it was awesome. Um,
Mm.
it was like you'd wake up to like 60 degrees, and it'd be like mid 70s during the day. It was pretty nice. I did hit Origins this weekend, which if you don't know, Origins is like a board gaming convention. So I
Mm.
wandered and looked at the hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of board games. Did not.
I'll be honest. Right now, I'm fighting a summer cold, so I'm on push to talk instead of my usual hot mic for this tonight. So if you see me start talking but don't hear anything, you're gonna have to give me the heads up that I'm muted because I just don't want you all hearing me coughing into the mic or anything.
Oh, you're cool. It happens. Getting them in the summer is the worst. Remember, there's I haven't watched the show in forever. There's like a Metalopolis episode where they're like, "Oh, I have a summer cold,"
Mm.
and that's like a running gag through the show. So we have this tonight's show is springing from a bit of a side conversation we had last week. So last week, if you didn't hear it, I don't remember how we got on that conversation, but Shad kind of started talking about some things like you shouldn't do on an indie show, which is if you were going to use, was it AC/DC and Metallica, Shad?
Yeah. The whole thing started out of don't be basic bitch for some of your stuff if you're going to be an indie guy because everybody's heard it before, and you're not going to stand out, and everybody's going to kind of write you off. So it kind of sprung out of that.
You, I have a good example of this in practice. So I went to see the Rise of the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, I think, on Memorial Day. So I was watching the trailers, and then they had like the Despicable Me 4 trailer, and they were doing Thunderstruck by AC/DC, and I'm kind of rolling my eyes, and I'm just like, okay, whatever. Like, of course, they use this in every movie trailer. And then they played like the Deadpool trailer, and they played like a Madonna song you never hear like on a movie trailer. It's like, oh, you have my attention because this is different.
One of my favorite movie uses because it's different and the contrast cracks me up is oddly it's in Deadpool 2 when Deadpool is on his early "This Is What I'm Doing Now" rampage to 9 to 5 by Dolly Parton. Like that one left me in stitches.
I'm like the Deadpool movies actually they seem to have fun with those. They kind of can do things a little more as the Deadpool character is. It's a little more unconventional. So
Ryan
I
Reynolds
appreciate that.
really understands that character.
Mm.
Yeah, the trailers. That's one of the best movie trailers I've ever seen because they're doing all sorts of stuff where like they're fighting in the scene and like the destroyed 20th Century Fox logo is behind them. But so tonight we're kind of talking about it's kind of I would call it our advice to I would say budding indie talent. And this is not gonna. There's gonna be some complaining because I think we have to kind of discuss some of our pet peeves, but it's more what I think is kind of seasoned watchers, and one of us being what I would call a seasoned veteran of the indie circuit. Just things that you should not do, and things.
So salt and pepper makes me seasoned, is what it
Yeah, and
is.
well, and also not even things you shouldn't do, but things like things you should consider doing, like things that would help you along. So I think the one I want to start with is so what.
I did sketch out kind of a like a categorical thing,
Okay, which
Brad.
category do you want to start with?
And I was going to start with music
Okay,
because we kind of already touched on that.
so okay, so my first thing with music is do not use Metallica, AC/DC. Do not use Megadeth. Don't use Slayer. If you heard an ECW, don't use it. I would suggest find something you like. Find something that kind of has a good beat to it. Um, oh, don't use Ramstein. You can use new Ramstein, but don't use
Oh,
Du Hast. Do not use that.
Guast,
Yeah,
Guast.
There are several reasons not to use Du Hast. One of them being overplayed, and the other is, frankly, it takes too long to wind up.
yeah,
I mean, it's again, it's probably like hack at this point, but I mean, like it does have like a amazing intro that would work. But you're right, like it probably a lot of setup to that.
If you
Really.
if your entrance needs to take 2 minutes to get to the hook of the song, like
Yeah.
you've done screwed up. I would say pick something with a good beat. Pick something you haven't heard before, and pick something that the audience probably hasn't heard before.
If you want to pick from a known artist, my recommendation is going to be pick something that is not one of their bigger hits. One of the ones that I had on tap, because when I was doing Babyface gimmick, I'm sorry, it was always I'd go there and the music guy would not have it, or his CD player wasn't working or something like that. So I had a list of like three or four things. I'm like, fine, use one of these. And the one that, if they had it, worked out pretty well was a Kenny Wayne Shepherd song called "In Too Deep," and it wastes no time. It's got a blaring hook right out of the start. It's got a good beat, that sort of stuff. But the thing is, everybody, everybody, everybody reaches, as you said, Matt, reaches for Thunderstruck. Everybody reaches for Highway to Hell, Shoot to Thrill, If You Want Blood. Um, don't you dare touch Enter Sandman, because that is claimed. Like there is a flag staked on that one. Do not. Same with Walk by Pantera. Just don't.
The other thing is if I hear "Shoot to Thrill" at an indie show, I'm like, well, I better get the old caffeine going because I'm about to be bored.
The
And I okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead. No, no. Go ahead, Matt.
I was actually I was gonna give an example of a song that was unique on the indies. And it's licensed music, which we talk about licensed music. So, but I personally want to hear this, and I want Tony Khan to buy the rights at least for one night, assuming that at Wembley that Swerve is in the main event. I want to hear this. Let's hopefully like this me playing it on my phone. You can actually like translate. Hold on. There's some like setup here. Is that coming across?
A little bit.
Oh.
It's choppy.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I'll use
Well,
it.
that's me. Like, yeah, no, I could play it on the podcast. It would live. It would, on video, it doesn't translate. But "Ain't Nobody" by Chaka Khan,
Ah,
which was Swerve Strickland, like his song of the Indies. It is like such a fun like dance song. And that's one of those like if he Tony Khan buys the rights to that, and right before Swerve comes out, they start playing that. You're gonna see like tens of thousands of people just like pop up and start dancing. And that obviously would enhance everything that you're about to see. But I get what you're saying. Like that to me, like that's a unique one. That's different. Like that makes you stand out.
I'll use a good
And he's
indie
got
Not just
example.
history with it. Yeah, he's got history
Let's
with it.
I'll use a good
not just
indie
let's play
example.
AC/DC's greatest hits.
So
So
there's a West Coast team. I don't know if they're still together. This is older, but so their tag team name was the Rock Ness Monsters, and they came out to like a rock cover of like the Tetris music.
oh, okay.
I was working on for another music idea, and the guy I was going to have do it never got back with me. But what I was going to do is have him do an electric guitar cover of When the Levee Breaks. So instead of you having the drums as the lead in for it, it's done with electric guitar, and I'm like that. Okay, that does take something basic, but it puts a unique spin on it. Because in that case, when you have a unique cover, it's like, okay, we got something we can work with here. But just using When the Levee Breaks or Kashmir or something like that, you're like, no, 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 don't do that. When the first tag team I was in with BJ, where he was doing the actor, I was doing the bodyguard, we called ourselves VIP, and we used a funk song, which is VIP by Here Come the Mummies. Big blare out of the gate, you get the name VIP right at the beginning, all that stuff happens right away. You're not gonna, and it had swagger to it, because it's funk music, but you're not, if everybody's heard it a million times, if it's what's,
A third of the time.
Mandatory Metallica.
Oh God, they do that here.
I forgot, you reminded me of something, Brad. So I had a guy who I was wrestling with, we were talking about this at one point, and he said, oh God, he said, I got to tell you, man, don't ever pick whatever the hot new thing is. I was like, what do you mean? He said, I remember a show I worked right after 8 Mile came out, and there were 4 dudes who wanted to use Lose Yourself as their entrance music on the same show.
Uh,
But
And it's like, I get it, but you're not being unique then. You're trend chasing.
yeah, so my advice would be this: find something that has a beat. So I would recommend one of two things. If you're gonna use heavy metal, find a Euro band that has a good beat to it, and use that because a lot of people won't have heard it, and if it's catchy, that'll be a new song they might be curious about. The other thing I would actually recommend is if you have if you live in a decent sized town like where I live or Matt lives, go find a local indie band and say, "Hey, can I use one of your songs?" Because then if you work a bigger indie, you might be able to get the indie band to do a live intro for you.
maybe.
There was a local band named Johnny Congaroo that I saw open for another band after I had hung my boots up. And the second or third song they played, I'm standing there listening to it, and I leaned over to my wife. I go, if I was still in the ring, this would be my music yesterday. It was excellent. It was an original by them, but it was just beautiful.
Or find a Christian
I
heavy
would,
metal band, because people probably haven't heard that, and there are some very quality Christian metal bands that you can get a good.
Who was the one from the 80s? Striper? Or
Yeah.
whatever?
Striper.
Is that Striper?
I will fully admit, I used Skillet a time or two whenever I
That's a
was
good pick, though.
wrestling.
But you could do Demon Hunter. Demon Hunter is a very good metal band. Skillet's not a bad pick either. The problem you run into with Skillet though is a lot of stadiums play their stuff now.
Well, that's actually that's the point I was going to make actually. If you want to know what not to play, go and watch any Major League Baseball game. I guess you could also watch a hockey game or an NBA game, but go in the stadium and sit for the entire game, and whatever rock music, metal music, whatever that they play over the stadium, take notes. Take a little notepad, write notes, be like, okay, write all the songs down. Do not use those songs. Okay.
Yeah.
They may be great songs. They may be classic songs. You don't need like you said, like we talked about Thunderstruck. You don't need Marilyn Manson's Beautiful People as your intro. I like Marilyn Manson's Beautiful People. You don't need that.
You don't
need a bunch of stuff.
I just watched the music video to that recently. I was like, damn, like I really wish he wasn't a piece of shit because I really did enjoy like.
Marilyn Manson has a good catalog.
Yeah, he does.
He's probably not a good person. There's been allegations made against him. But,
Yeah, and I would not discount them because I mean,
yeah,
yeah,
but
Yeah.
yeah, do
Well,
that.
and Beautiful People was also the SmackDown theme for a little while too.
yeah,
So
it was.
it's like,
Yeah, make
I'm-
sure it's not been used in WWE.
just
Except if someone wants to start coming out to oddities by Insane Clown Posse, I would not be against that because that is the best wrestling theme of all time.
Yeah.
I'll give one more example of a unique indie theme that actually I feel works. I personally think when I first heard it, I'm like, what, really this? But it works for him. Effie uses Goodbye Yellow Brick Road by Elton John. And when I first heard it, I'm like, what? This is weird. But then I'm like, damn it, this makes sense. It makes sense. And people, it's odd to see like a crowd of indie, especially indie workers who are there to see like, not indie workers, but like indie wrestling fans there for like GCW. They want to see like the hardcore match. They want to see like Schlack put some idiot through like a barbed wire wrapped like
Exploding
or something.
whatever.
Yeah. I shouldn't hate too much on GCW. Like GCW is kind of like they're kind of like CZW back in the day. They have just like dumb
I hate that they
hardcore stuff, deathmatch stuff, but they also have like some shockingly good wrestling at points. So
yeah, they frustrate me because like I enjoy the show for the most part, but like I just the deathmatch stuff I just don't dig.
I guess it depends. If you have there's deathmatch where it's like, stuff that maybe like John Moxley does. That maybe or like AEW sometimes does, hardcore matches, death matches. That's a little smarter. Or there's like the clip I actually sent Shad like a day or two ago. I don't know if you ever watched it, but it's like, let me take a power bomb through a board that has been a board of like knives and forks and nails like sticking up.
Yeah, those are dumb.
And that's not the finish. That's not the finish. He kicked out the dude. He got power bombed to that, and then kicked out at 2. And it's like, what do you need? Like, let me pull out a gun and shoot you in the head.
Matt, I hated everything about that clip. You sent that to me, and I seethed with how much I hated everything in that damn
It's
clip.
stupid.
So can I make a contentious statement about things I've seen? So Shad can disagree or agree with me. I would take a bump in thumbtacks a million times before I take one bump in Legos.
You know what I probably would. What I would fear.
Shad's really thinking about it right now.
What I would fear taking a bump in thumbtacks is not actually like the actual tack part. I would fear like if the tack is sideways and I get like the edge of the thumbtack, because I feel like that would just embed more in your flesh.
I feel like
if bump on it,
I feel
that
like
would hurt.
I feel like if you just took a bump into like 100 of them, you're not gonna notice that one because you're gonna have so many like.
Well, I mean, Matt, that's gonna happen anyway, because when people put thumbtacks out on the mat, they just pour it out. They don't like set them up, individually, so they're pointing up.
Yeah, and physics are what they are. Like some are gonna land sideways.
So, okay, here's gonna be my weird take, Brad.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how much more one would hurt than the other, but with the Legos, someone just running a hand down your back gets all of them off of you.
Yeah,
as opposed to someone having to pick the damn things out one at a time.
Think about the blunt trauma, though. And the other problem is is they're still in the ring, and you're gonna fall on them more. And then I've seen
no. If I'm in a match and taking a bump on either one of those, that's the finish. I'm done. I'm not doing more of this shit.
The one match I watched, they tore like one called Mander's Boots Off, like right in the middle of the Legos, and he had to.
Mm.
There's just something distinctly painful about the Legos.
It's because you've done it. You've stepped on Legos before. You know how much it hurts. How many people have walked on a pile of thumbtacks? Yeah, there's not like a pain to associate with.
Yeah,
So no,
Well,
I'm not. Once I take a bump on either one of those, match is over. I'm done. No, I'm not. I'm
y-
not doing double.
Brad, we all know that the most devastating item or hardcore thing that you could be bumped onto is sprinkles or jimmies, depending
yes,
upon your regional location. That the Los Ice Creams in Jakarta used to
yeah.
occasionally do.
I don't know.
I
That's
do love that as a subversion. That's hilarious to me.
yeah. That one is always
Did
funny.
did people see this recently? Like I it kind of came and went, and no one really commented. But I think like Shazza McKenzie, you know who she is? She's like she's
She's an
Australian, but
Australia. Yeah,
she's like back in the States, and I think she was like trying to do stuff with like
she's
Quack. Like Quack's trying to like work his way back into the business.
she's
Since
been
people were
doing
like,
some
no,
Impact stuff. I think.
recently?
Yeah,
Hmm.
she's been on something sort of high profile. Yeah, I think it was
Hmm.
Impact. She
Um,
she wouldn't be a bad signing for AEW. Honestly, I always thought she was a quality worker.
I don't
so
feel like I share that same. I feel like there is a better
You could, I mean,
version
is like
of
a
her.
low end mid Carter. She'd be fine, I think.
I feel like they have better versions of her in like Lady Frost and Taya Valkyrie, and I don't really necessarily care for either one of those two.
I like
Like they're
Taya.
not, I'm not there. I don't like hate them, but it's also like,
They have some good.
they're not like
I think some of their young lions, like Queen Aminata, is like someone that I
Queen
would.
Aminata. I'm pretty high on. I think she's really good.
She's improved a lot lately.
She's
when I
actually really
saw
good.
when I
She's
Lady,
saw
improved
Lady
a ton.
I saw Lady
Right.
Frost live, and she actually really impressed me too. I don't know how well it translated over to TV, but
I I don't know where she lives, but I think for a time at least she was on the East Coast because I would see her on local indies, and not as if I was going to local indies like every weekend, but there was a period of time where I went probably a handful of times to local indie shows over the course of like maybe like a year and a half, 2 years, and she was on like quite a few, so I feel she was probably like on the East Coast area. Because I would see her and her husband, who actually is a wrestler too, I think he still does this indie stuff, but they would get booked on shows a lot, and she's not bad. Um, she used to be with Impact, and I felt like that was perfectly fine for her, but now she's with AEW, and I think she mostly just like Ring of Honor stuff, which I guess is fine, but she's kind of like, I mean, again, the reality is like people get all worked up, but it's like actually need mid to lower card guys. Like those guys have a function.
that's what I hate about like
People
modern.
lose that.
That's
Yeah,
what I
people
hate
lose
about
that.
modern
Like,
internet culture is
mhm,
like if you go back and watch old stuff, and you can be memorable in that. Like everyone remembers Coco Beware. Like he didn't win shit unless it was
yeah,
a jobber. Like there have to be guys like that because not everyone can be at the top of the card. Not everyone's meant to be. Like there is like honestly, there's more stability in being a mid carder sometimes. But I say that as like a long term fantasy booker that plays like Legends of Wrestling. Is people always want all these main eventers, and I'm like, why? You have like 12. You can run off 12 main eventers for years. It's like those mid card and low mid card guys, like where you always need like some change and like you just need bodies. You always need bodies in those sections, and I don't get why people get so upset about that.
that
It's like a new markdom.
it, that's that'll send me off into a tangent, but I really do feel like people lose perspective today. Like, and I really felt this a lot like in the last few days, but the word fumbled has lost all meaning. Oh, so and so's they're fumbling him. It's like, have they? Like, have they? Oh, they're AEW's fumbling Jay White. Are they? Are they fumbling Jay White? Jay White's been with the company like a year. He has consistently been on TV on a in a company that has, I'll discount like Ring of Honor. They have 5 hours of programming a week, which is more than some people get. Like Impact doesn't have 5 hours, but it's less than WWE gets. They have 5 hours, and they've constantly featured Jay White, and he's actually one of the most protected guys if you actually pay attention to how he's booked. Like he rarely ever loses, or especially like takes like a pinfall, whatever. Like rarely ever. He's constantly in programs. He's in a program now where he has like a title. You can people may not give a shit about like the 6-man titles, but he's holding a title, and he's a guy that you could easily slot into a program for another main title or as a main heel, or if they turn him face. He's actually a main guy. Just because he hasn't been holding the world title for like 12 months doesn't mean he's fumble.
Or even like
So
Ricky,
people act like, oh, they're so and so's fumbled.
or even like Ricky
Have they
Starks.
been on TV?
Even like Ricky Starks. Okay,
Ricky Starks is a great example, and a lot of people are talking about him now.
Yeah, like he had the tag titles. They kept his program on after the Punk thing blew up. He's been a fixture on TV for a while, minus oh, he had that horrific, was it back injury that he was out for a while?
Outside of injuries, he's been on TV consistently for going on 4 years. However long
he
it's
was
not
like the fixture
time.
of the Taz stable in its later days. He was the FTW champion for a while.
Mhm.
He had the whole Powerhouse Hobbs program.
Up until he and Big Bill lost the tag belts. And then
Well, he had that.
apparently,
He had that. What, like the left side of his body went numb or something?
yeah, there's a rumor that he had that would insinuate to me some kind of spinal thing, that where one side of his body got screwed up.
Well, he
Just been like,
he had a back injury. I think that's what put him out. So that would probably be a problem.
I think Shad's referring to like the most recent thing.
Yeah, where he was.
Which
They changed it on the fly because I think he went numb and he was just like, "You gotta pin me."
Yeah, it sounds like he probably had like a stinger, and thankfully it wasn't anything major. It was just like he got like it's like cliche as it is, a shock to the system. Like he got momentarily, but he was fine, thankfully. But yeah, and he's been out. There's lots of rumors now about why he's been out. I guess he's healthy, but either is turning down pitches or whatever. But that's
what's gonna happen is there's gonna be all this like blah blah blah, and then we'll get the truth like 2 years later. And it was like he turned down the one thing because he didn't want Big Bill to job or something. That's what it's all gonna be when it's all said and done.
That's what some people are saying is the case, but it doesn't matter only in the sense that like people are like, oh, they fumbled him. It's like, have they? Like, I don't know how to tell people, but if a guy is consistently on your TV for years, and I don't mean like they pop up, they have a program for like a month and they disappear. It's not Undertaker booking where it's like, it's WrestleMania season. Undertaker's going to pop up in like February to set up a match in late March, April, early April. No, like if they're consistently shown on TV and booked for years, and it's not just like as a jobber to the start. Like if you're like, well, Matt, the Gambler showed up for years on WCW. Yeah, he did.
He never
Italian
had a
Stallion
program though.
Yeah, you always saw Brooklyn Brawler on WWF television. It's like, well, yeah, that's true. But I mean, if you actually are in programs and you win a lot of the time, and some of them are high profile, and they even have things like you win the Owen Cup and what have you. Like you're not fumbled.
Well, even if you're
like you can quibble about,
even if you're between
is this guy
programs,
at the level I want him to be?
Even if you're like between programs though, and you're just racking up wins, like as long as they're, because that's kind of the problem I've always had with like the way WWE does it, is if WWE doesn't have you directly in a program, or they're not immediately interested in like doing something with you, they're probably burying you, and then like you're dead cold. Whereas, like, I think good
Mhm.
booking, like, if they're not doing anything with you, you might do some jobs to people that have to move up. But, like, there is a way to not be in a program and, like, protect you and, like, keep you, like, winning stuff.
Mhm.
Because I tend to have a problem with, like, the WWE system. And AEW has done it a bit, too. I won't lie. But, like, when they're just jobbing you relentlessly and there's no point to it, like, that's where you kind of get buried. Whereas AEW is a little better about, like, they know how to job you up the card. Like Daniel Garcia, I think is a good example of someone they were jobbing
Oh yeah,
to then like turn around and
I'm sure
push
there's
Darby Allin.
I'm sure there's tons of people who would argue that Daniel Garcia is like fumbled, but it's like, yeah, maybe again, maybe he is not pushed to the level that you think he is,
But you
but
can,
if you actually pay attention, Daniel Garcia has been booked and booked as a somebody, whether he's winning all the time or not. He's been booked as a somebody that you should care about basically since he signed, and that's been at least like a couple years now.
but like, what do these people think? Like, you're not gonna. I mean, I'm sorry. I like Daniel Garcia. I think his gimmick's great.
Yeah,
But
I think he has a ton
if
of promise, and that kid's like 25.
but the thing is, here's my thing though, and I like him a lot. But if you're a national promotion on TBS and Warner Brothers stations, and Daniel Garcia is your world champion, something has gone terribly wrong with your promotion. Like, and that's nothing against Daniel Garcia. That is more like a placement thing. Like that means
They are they are building Garcia slowly, steadily, giving him more and more credibility, making him into a bigger and bigger deal without rushing it. And I like that because you get to
And
see him improve.
and specifically with Garcia, they've already sowed the storylines, and AEW is better with long term. I feel some long term booking or long term storytelling where it doesn't even have to. They can backburner it for months, but they've already sowed the seeds where if he's had some big losses because he was in like the continent the inaugural Continental, and he didn't get that many points, and that's part of the storyline. It's like, maybe, I don't know what to do. Like I didn't win that much. Like selling it like, you know can he really compete? He's lost, but and they've already sowed the seeds where eventually he's going to start winning. He's going to start advancing. He's going to be like a threat. And I kind of with you, Brad. Like there's so many intricacies. This is one of the things I love about the wrestling business itself. There's so many intricacies where it's like some of it's not fair, uh, but not everyone is necessarily meant to be world champion
no.
material, and that's
I would
okay.
argue. I would argue most are not meant to be, and in the modern era, like
Yeah,
I think that's actually one of the things I think has actually damaged WWE the last 20 years is putting the title on too many different people.
I feel in the modern era of a wider variety of people, it's more believable. But I kind of see what you're saying. But when I say some of it's unfair, I mean at the heart of the matter, like we think to some extent we've progressed and we have, because guys nowadays, and we've listed this as a positive, I think it's a positive. Now, guys nowadays don't look like they used to. A guy like Daniel Garcia can be a star in the wrestling business.
Well, I
Maybe
think
he's not selling out stadiums, but he can be a star in the wrestling business looking like he does. He doesn't have to be 6'5", 6'6", 300 pounds,
I think
steroid
MMA.
loaded Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, I think MMA and
Yeah,
UFC have helped that a lot. Where it's like,
yeah,
oh, that guy's like, that guy's a champion and he has love handles and man titties. Like,
yeah.
okay, like so, so I think that helps a lot. I think WWE's a little too stuck on um their the bodybuilder thing and being big.
Yeah.
They got, it's really weird. Um they had gotten a lot better about that and the roster had gotten smaller. And then when Vince was kind of going back to that towards the end, but man, when Triple H got in, he really bloated that roster up real quick with a
Is
bunch
there
of his
any
signings.
justification really, really, for a guy like Karrion Kross to still be on TV and promoted other than like that Triple H just loves him because he reminds him of him.
There's so many people in the
He's terrible. He's an absolutely terrible worker.
so many people in the business have such a hard on for him because of his look, but it's like he legitimately like sucks. He's not good in the ring.
He actually, I would say his look now is 10 times worse than it used to be. Like when he came out, he's like at least in like good shape. When he come and has like tats, he looks visually more impressive. But when he had like the shaved head, he'll come out and it's like he looks scarier. Now when you have like, you know, goatee, like this long, like greasy hair, it's like I already don't like you. I already think you're like it's a joke that you're pushed, but now you look dumber. Then you don't look as threatening as you used to.
Oh, that's
But-
a good segue.
He's slowly getting the Triple H hair, like
So that's a good
long,
that's a
slick
good
back.
segue. That's a good segue.
Yeah, I was going to finish one last thing on the music just as a piece of advice.
Yeah, we went on a long tangent.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I was trying to break in and drag us back over to it, but I didn't have a good spot. Here's the best thing I can say for finding good music, entrance music. Don't pick something just because you like it. Listen for specific things. Listen for a strong open. Listen for a good beat, and make a collection of those things, and then start looking at, hey, how well would this fit for me? Work it that way, as opposed to like.
I would say also based on your region and stuff, go with that. So like if you're in the South, you can probably get away with like country or some bluegrass, whereas if you come up north, you're probably going to pigeonhole your character a bit if you go that route. Depending, I mean, you can do some country up in the north, but you have to go real basic bitch with it then.
I would say it's based off of the your gimmick, really. If you switch gimmicks, you can switch music, but find something that's going to be a good. Look, when I was doing my Crazy Hill Preacher gimmick, I used Arsonist Lullaby by Halsey. That does not have a driving beat until you get past the opening, but the opening's not very long. You get a good beat, and then you got a sound that kind of worked for it. You know, I worked it backwards on that one. But Brad, I think you were getting ready to go into look, right?
Yeah.
Hold on before you do that. I would say I'm gonna throw this out there for people who know this song, and maybe you guys do, maybe you don't. But if I were to be a wrestler, and I had a more serious gimmick, or especially if I was a heel, I would use Merciless Cult by Dur and Grey, Japanese metal band. If you don't know that, like write it down and listen to the song, and you would understand like that would work. And that would be like, I feel more unique because not a lot of American audiences probably don't know it, but
Yeah, and don't fall for the trap of thinking like, oh, I'm going to be different and go with Iron Maiden. Like Iron Maiden's not great for entrance music.
just do Iron Man then if you like.
Yeah,
like
but the
that.
Road Warriors did that, so
Yeah,
that's
you
true.
know,
That's true.
the Road Warriors did it, and then Vince Russo did it, so it's double snake bit.
oh yeah, I forgot about that. Ugh. I think he just did instrumental though.
I'm here to ruin your memory.
Yeah.
When it comes to your look, okay, first of all, I know full well most people who are getting in the ring on the indie level, there are a lot of people getting in the ring that are not going to have the WWE look. You're just not. Okay? So, I'm going to tell you that if you're going to be a different body type, make sure you dress in a way that will either accentuate strengths for you or will minimize what might detract from it.
So, in a great example, because a lot of people are guilty of this in the
Cole Radrick.
Well, yes, I was gonna say a lot of people were guilty of this in the 2000s though. Is little beanpoles wearing jean shorts and a wife beater? Like, do not do that. Well,
God.
do not do that. Do not do that in general. But like, if you're 120 pounds with little chicken legs and like little arms, like maybe consider like covering yourself up, or do what Hydra did in Chikara, where he wore a bodysuit that was just like all muscly.
Didn't way back in the 80s, didn't Danny Davis do that too in WWF?
I think he just.
I feel like he wore. I felt he was wearing padding at some point.
No, he had
Maybe
like a bodysuit, but it's kind of he had like a bodysuit, kind of like when Cornette would wrestle sometimes. I think he had like that.
So what I would say is if you are like rail thin, gimmicks. Put gimmicks on it. Get yourself like some forearm sleeves or bracers or something for it. Like make sure that the gimmicks are what stand out, not the fact that you're rail thin. Unless there was one guy that I used to wrestle with. It was funny because these two guys teamed together. They were best friends. And one of them was a rail thin little dude, but he could jump. And the other one could also jump, except while and everybody just called him Bub. So I can't remember his real name. But Bub was rail thin, but he could jump. Colby, on the other hand, Colby could jump, but Colby had that. He had that crazy high metabolism where he was just naturally cut. So he was real thin, but he was defined. Okay, in that, one thing I'll say is I think it's better to kind of break things up because, like Colby would wear, he had like black pants he would wear, and then he put tape on his hands. And I looked at it, I was like, dude, it's. I told him to wear elbow pads because I thought it kind of broke it up and gave it a more uniform professional look that way. Other people, whatever. But if you're going to if you're going to the ring wearing a pair of jeans and a t-shirt, you just look like everybody else. And this is wrestling. You need to stand out in a good way, not in a cheesy B movie from the early 80s kind of way.
I shouldn't be sitting in the crowd thinking, "Oh, I could probably beat you up."
Even if you can think that and you're a scumbag heel, that's fine. But don't look like everybody's sitting in the crowd. And I'm going to say that a lot of this stuff is going to fall under my 90% rule. 9 times out of 10, this applies. Everyone can find an exception, but 9 times out of 10, this is what's going to apply. But find something that makes you stand out. For God's sake, please, please. And wear knee pads. Wear knee pads, you moron. Wear knee pads.
I would say in this day and age too, like getting halfway decent looking gear is way more affordable than it used to be. Like in the 2000s, like I understand when guys had like those awful vinyl stuff, or they're wearing sweatpants to the ring because getting gear was not easy. You probably had to have a tailor make it for you. And nowadays you can, I think High Spot sells gear.
High Spots, eLucha, there's lots of places that'll sell pre-made gear.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to do that, try and make sure you have a unified theme. Don't show up with,
color
a
coordinate,
pair of,
please.
Yeah,
please
color coordinate so that it looks like that you meant to put it together, not just like you accidentally did.
Don't make me think. Remember we watched the GWF? I don't remember his name. No, it was AWF. The one jobber guy. No. Oh shit, it was AWF or GWF where the guys like gear, Shad was like, it looked like they needed an extra wrestler and everyone just dumped their gear on the floor and like masked and gimmicked him up. Like, don't look like that guy.
That marks you out as a loser. Okay, so here I got a great example for you. I pulled up eLucha as a reference, right? One of the pre-made patterns that you can buy from them, that's black pants with yellow accents, and it's got the X-Men from the movie, like the yellow circle with the black X through it thing. Don't show up wearing those and like a blue singlet, or have your pads match, have your wrist tape match, have your gear match. Make yourself look like you give a damn about it, not just, well, this is what not just thrown together. Because one way you look, like Brad said, everybody just dumped their bag out and it's like, go for it. Well, you look like the wrestling loser. Or another way, if you put yourself together where you look like you care about how you look kind of professional.
Yeah. Now, there is one exception to this. If you're going to be in like a street fight or any kind of like out of the ring brawl, like it is more than acceptable to show up in your jeans, a cut off shirt with your wrist wrap and your shit kicking boots on. Like that is an acceptable situation to do that. But that is the only situation it's acceptable in. And if you are in that situation, do not show up in your regular gear because then it makes it look like you're not taking it seriously.
Oh, I think that in places like AEW, like when they have like a street fight, whatever like that, you need to like if you're gonna especially if you're gonna do like a bunkhouse match or something like that, it's like it's not a real bunkhouse match or blood and guts thing. I want to see y'all show up in maybe like a wife beater, jeans, cowboy boots, elbow pad. I want it to be like real back in the day. I want to see like
Like the
I want it to be like either Memphis or I want it to be like Jim Crockett Promotions, where you show up and you got like jeans with your shit kicking boots on. Really, it should be cowboy boots. I want to see your fists taped up. I want to see like I think like a white shirt or a white wife beater so that blood can really show up. I want to see all that. Like it's not real. You're half-assing it. You're not caring unless you actually show up in the proper gear for this bunkhouse
like
brawl.
the Smoky Mountain that 3 team thing we watched. I think they were all in like I think they were all in like street gear.
Or show up in something that looks rough and different than your normal gear. Just
Yeah.
because it makes it look like you're taking it seriously.
Also, do not get anything that looks like it's vinyl, because that takes
Anything
back
that
so
is
bad.
only vinyl. Don't have
Some
all of your gear be vinyl.
Shad,
someone on
I think Frank just means the Japanese guys tend to prefer like basic look gear.
Oh, okay. All right. All right.
Cause I see what he's saying, and that's kind of an aesthetic. But if you watch like a lot of Japanese wrestling, a lot of guys just do have like black trunks, like knee pads, just a basic look. Cause yeah,
sometimes just black trunks and like wrestling shoes, not even knee pads or elbow pads. It's like really basic.
yeah,
Okay. All right. All right. All right. I follow you.
you kind
I
of
mean,
get used to it. I would say like the Joshi feds are much more flashy, but
Joshi Feds in the last few years for sure, uh, they've kind of heavily leaned into the whole like Japanese idol culture.
yeah,
So the cost they actually refer to their outfits as like costumes. Like the costumes are more elaborate. There's a lot more like frills and lace and stuff like that. Um, it's unique, which is it sometimes is actually it makes for a an interesting and sometimes amusing juxtaposition. Like you have someone like Sakazaki will come out there in like the like a almost like pajama pants, like like MC Hammer or like
Parachute pants.
Aladdin. Yeah, yeah. Like like she's a genie out of a bottle, and then she'll go and just murder people, like throw
yeah.
the stiffest forearms you've ever seen, throwing it like level people. Like it's the level of like violence is seems incredibly disproportionate to her look. But
I would say the
yeah,
New
like
Japan guys, like more of their flash is in their like entrance attire than it might be in
mhm.
there. I haven't. I'm trying to think of guys because I see what he's saying. Like if you're kind of there can be like not a great variety, especially in the undercards. Now, Frank, the one thing like, and you wouldn't see that in AEW, but if you do watch like New Japan, the young lions intentionally have like basic gear, like that's
Yeah,
kind of a point of
which
being a young boy. But
which I probably have some criticisms of New Japan because I feel sometimes they keep the young lions for longer than they probably should. But I do think it's interesting and I like where, yeah, like young lions, you'll see them wrestling undercard matches for like a couple years. in just like basic black trunks and wrestling shoes, maybe knee pads and elbow pads or not, but it's just very, very basic. And then they'll go on excursion and they'll come back, and all of a sudden it's like they have like a completely different look, and they've graduated in a sense, so they have like a
Yeah.
flashy look, and it kind of oddly immediately gets them over as like this is the new character. And
Yeah.
obviously they have to back it up with like personality and ring. But here's a great example, recent example. He's now probably been back like a year, a little over a year. But Yota Tsuji went on an excursion, came back, and immediately had like a fantastic look. Like he looked like, and they immediately pushed him to like the main event of I think Dominion last year, and he lost, and he hasn't quite reached like that upper level. And some of his matches, it's unfortunately it's kind of, and that's kind of the overall state of New Japan. It's like it's a question mark if it's like he's the guy that can be like the next level, like the new star. If not him, it may be like Shota Imuno. I don't know. But point is, like, he has a different look. All of a sudden he comes out like long pants, but he's got like long hair, a goatee. He just looks like a badass and cool.
They have a real, I don't know, that there's some, like, I like him, but a lot of their young talent's not really doing much for me, but they've been a mess for what, 2 years now?
I think that, yeah, I think
3 years.
Well,
no,
really
they've been
bad.
a mess.
It's really bad this year.
It's been a mess since they got rid of the IWGP title for the world title. It was a mess before that, but that's really, I think, where they
it's the
crashed.
Cracks started. Yeah, the cracks started forming a couple years back, but it's really bad this year.
I think it's funny that Stardom, I thought, was starting to show some flaws and cracks in the booking last year. And then everyone was like, oh my God, they got rid of Rossi. And I'm like, well, I kind of like it better since I got rid of Rossi.
The booking has been solid for Stardom. It actually has been quite good. I think what the problem they're hitting now is that everyone's excited about Rossi's promotion, Marigold. So a lot of the focus is on that. But Stardom has been like well booked, and they've actually they somehow kept the majority of their talent when a lot of people were holding their breath thinking like there was going to be this mass exodus of talent, and that doesn't seem to be the case. But to go back to the discussion, I kind of like that juxtaposition where it's like as a young lion you can start off basic and then graduate because I think it does something. But for indie guys, it's like I guess I've traumatized by like the aughts in indie wrestling where guys would just wear vinyl or like the cheapest attire possible. And I was talking to you guys offline. I think I even said it when we reviewed the match, but I go back to like the Eddie Kingston, Mike Quackenbush match we watched in Chikara, which was a great match, but I saw the outfits that both of them were wearing, and it was like, ooh, it's like so indie.
Yeah.
Where it's like you guys spent like $5 between the two of you on your wrestling attire, and it did actually take it away from me.
The sad thing is like Mike actually had decent gear for that era. Like Mike actually had pretty nice gear.
I felt. Was his the one that was kind of more vinyl, or was that Eddie's?
His was all vinyl.
Yeah, but
and
like,
he had like a full body suit minus sleeves going. But that was both the thing at the time, and it was not cheap either.
Yeah, contextually of the time, Mike had top end gear, like for what you saw. Because remember we watched Cage of Death. I think Hero had vinyl.
Yeah.
Who else had vinyl?
The aughts were like the age of vinyl, and it was like, ugh.
Because Joe and Claudio,
it just looks so cheap. I appreciate what you were saying, Shad. You could have been like, no, this is actually like the top of the line at the time, but it's like that's guys coming out in like spandex would have been better.
Here's
visually to me, aesthetically,
the way I approached it is because when I started out, I had a set of ring pants that were stretch vinyl. And then I had a set of ring pants that were Lycra, which is the generic name for spandex. Except they weren't tight. They were loose. They would flow. And so the last set like that I got made, I actually had them done half and half. The interior, I had done with the Lycra, because the Lycra wouldn't rub and like tear on itself. It would brush past itself, not a problem. But where I threw a lot of kicks, and yes, I used leg slaps um, whenever I did it, the vinyl would make a great snapping sound whenever I did that. And where I was so used to doing martial arts stuff, I already had arm movement as part of my kicks, so it looked like it flowed into it. And then, so like it was lycra on the inside, vinyl on the. The first time I ordered, it was actually flipped, and I ordered another set that had it the correct way. And but I could kick and hit, and it would sound great, but it was a two tone, unintentionally almost kind of looking like Jushin Liger pants, but it was offset. It wasn't just like the vinyl look. It was both. So it gave, kind of a, it broke it up. It gave it some variety.
So what's the other area on your list, Chad?
I have two more. The next one is going to be when it comes to your gimmick, because there have been so many cases when guys would come in and want to train, and they had these ideas for these big grand gimmicks. And if they even made it through the training, that's a big if. Then, and they tried to do these grandiose gimmicks they'd fall flat. Because the first thing to remember is, when it comes to wrestling, you are doing live theater. You are not explaining every little thing, especially on the indie level. You're not explaining every little thing to everybody. And you can't be too clever about it. You have to make sure that what the gimmick is apparent. Because, I mean, even if you're sitting close to the ring, they're still 6 feet away from you, and then like 4 or 5 feet elevated from where you're sitting.
And you can honestly be so inside baseball the audience has no like way to connect to what you're doing.
I made that mistake early on in my last gimmick, because someone was trying to call me by my old gimmick name, and I'm doing this promo, and so I don't know why I thought this was a good idea. I couldn't begin to tell you, but I did it anyway. I went full on Twin Peaks, like something is inhabiting this body thing. I did the entire Fire Walk with Me thing as part of a promo, and nobody got it. I was trying to be way too clever, as opposed to the gimmick being leaning on pressing on a button that I knew would piss people off, and doing it in my own unique cadence and terms. I was trying to be far too clever.
It's kind
And
of
and don't do that. It won't work.
it's kind of one of those things I complain about with a lot of modern shows and stuff where there's this generation of writers out there now that came up on TV tropes, and the lesson they took away from TV tropes is tropes are bad. So now they write all this subversive stuff because tropes bad, but it's like no, tropes are like common like geographical points in a story so that people
They're
can know where you're
nodes.
going.
They are nodes that link different aspects of humanity. Like you, Shad, you, Brad, and me, we all grew up very differently, even though we were in the same kind of generation, the same country. Like there are many things that we have in common, but we grew up very differently. And yet there are things that connect us, shared interests, whatever, obviously. But like there are tropes that are timeless that work. Like look, before there was a website called fucking TV tropes that you could read. And I read TV tropes all the time. I find it fascinating. It's interesting. It's really cool. I learn things about different shows,
It's a good
programs,
it's
whatever.
a good it's actually a good tool to learn writing.
Yeah, and it's also like I sometimes I'll read TV tropes about, let's say I'll read TV tropes about a show I'm watching, like, oh, let me look at the TV tropes on it. And it'll reference other things, and it's like, oh, let me look at that. And then I'll look and I'll be like, oh, that seems like an interesting show. Maybe I'll watch that show. And I got like a show recommendation. It's useful. It's very useful. My point is, even before TV tropes, there's a reason that guys like Joseph Campbell wrote books like The Man with a Thousand Faces. Like these are timeless. Like however you want to perceive humanity as existing or originating, whatever, like there are common themes or tropes that have been passed down forever. The hero's journey, like there's a hero, he has a struggle, like he has to overcome the struggle, etc. Like there's tropes, there's stories, there's different themes that all work into each other. You're no longer, you're not interesting if you're like, I'm gonna subvert everything. I'm gonna be, it's stop being high concept. Start just to put it bluntly, start playing the hits.
Yeah.
Start doing the things that actually will connect people together
Well, and like,
and actually like make that work. Start simple. At least if you're starting off, if you want to be high concept
You
after
got
the
to
fact,
build.
like
yeah,
yeah. If
and the
you
other
want
thing is
people,
like if you're gonna do like, say you're gonna write satire, like
yeah.
you like honestly like when I learned to when I used to write a lot of satirical stuff, like I learned from Looney Tunes and The Simpsons. Like
Mm.
that's what taught me how to write good satire. And there's a lot of people that write stuff now, and they're trying to be like super smart about it. It's like, no, just watch Looney Tunes. Like they gave you the exact blueprint of how to satirize something.
Mhm.
So the way that I look at it is, first of all, there's a trope called tropes are not bad. But the way I look at it is, find the trope that works for you and then do it your way. Don't subvert it. Get a hold of the trope that you like, that you want to do, and do it your way. Why? People will recognize the general idea, and that you can run with it, and you can make it special, make it your own. But if everything you're trying to do is subvert or be too, like, God rest his soul, I really enjoyed watching Bray Wyatt. But
Mhm.
sometimes he would get too far in the weeds with what he was trying to do, and he would lose people. And
The last stuff he did, and I would say,
so the thing is, what were his biggest successes? Were things that we had that on this show. Oh, he's doing like
Cape
the
Fear.
creepy kid show, or he's doing like it's a swamp cult. But he did them his way, and they resonated in such a way that it drew people in. Don't try and be too clever. Don't try and subvert everything. Play it straight. Now here's the thing. I'm saying don't be too complicated whenever you come up with your gimmick. You know, my first gimmick was that I was a bodyguard enforcer. Okay, and part of the gimmick was I hid weapons everywhere, and I was a prick about it. Okay, that works. But the other thing is, you don't want to be too simple or too stupid that people feel insulted by the gimmick. You don't want to. Okay, here two good examples. Meet Sean Stasiak and Beaver Cleavage. The gimmicks were straightforward, but were so damn dumb, nobody cared. So keep them simple, but don't make them stupid. And so, whenever you find your gimmick, especially early on, play it straight. Also, don't. I said earlier with the music, don't trend chase. Okay, I was doing shows in Kentucky. One guy showed up and he had blue and white tights, a UK Wildcats shirt, and a blue and white tiger mask style mask. And everybody hated it because nobody took it seriously. Everybody thought it was lame and patronizing. Is kind of what I'm getting at. I'm sorry, I may have talked that point into the ground. Matt is making just judicious notes over there.
Hey, no, I appreciate that. I kind of agree with you. Like I guess this is like a larger. I mean, this might be just not just wrestling, like overall with kind of across like rest entertainment medium. Like I don't. I'm actually really tired of like this I'm subverting tropes. What I appreciate more is when you're subverting the subversion. And I think I've referenced this on the show before, and this is at this point going like years back, but one of the things that the WWE did in recent years that I actually really liked, because it was a subversion of the expected subversion, was you had Alexis Bliss forming a tag team and a friendship with Nikki Cross. And not that Nikki Cross is an unattractive woman, but she's not as conventionally attractive as Alexis Bliss.
She was especially not portrayed that way.
Yeah.
Yes. So you had these two as friends as a team, and you were anticipating, especially like WWE. Maybe Vince was like not paying attention to this because I think this was still maybe during the Vince era, but like you were expecting, oh, Alexis is going to turn on her because she's the pretty one. She's going to turn on the other one. Or Nikki Cross is going to get jealous of Alexis Bliss and turn on her.
Yeah.
And they never did it. It was just like you're expecting. It's like, oh, now's the turn. And they're just like, no, we're not. That's not happening. We're actually friends. We love each other. And it was like, I was like, oh my God, like that. Yes. Yeah. That's because that's actually real life. Like you actually have in real life people who look differently, even though again, like Nikki Cross, not unattractive. Like I'm not trying to say that. I'm just saying like one would be perceived a certain way. And in the weird world of wrestling, it has been like childlike where it's like, oh, they're gonna turn on each other because of this stupid reason. They didn't do that. And I was like, wow, like that was not a subversion. You didn't go that way. You subverted the subversion. Like I appreciate that. So
you bring up Nikki Cross, and the problem that when she did her Nikki Ash character, what, almost a superhero or something like that. I know that the ballyhoo at the time was that it was her idea and that sort, but it was so straightforward. It was so basic that people dumped on it. You know, it was like not that long ago, really. We had the Hurricane who did that gimmick, but it was funny.
I think the problem with Nikki Cross in that gimmick is it's not what people wanted from her.
Yeah, they liked Nikki was really good at portraying. She was really good at portraying that she had gone off the deep end.
Like the best thing she ever did as a character was, I think she wrestled Shayna Baszler where she like choked her out and like Nikki Cross went out just like with a big grin on her face the whole time. Like that is like the best character work.
She enjoyed it.
Yeah. Like that was like the best character work she ever like. That was like great character work because it's like holy shit, like she like that's like some straight up like psycho stuff. Like that's like good character work.
And Nikki was so straightforward in saying, I'm not a superhero, but I'm dressing this way to inspire people, that everyone's just kind of like...
Yeah, and the problem I have with it, too, is, like, she had, like, a real mystique about her, too. Like, she had that, she had a touch of that, like, Awesome Kong mystique that, like, you couldn't, like, they never could really screw up.
And here's the thing, I liked Nikki Cross. Like, across the board. In the ring, everything I heard about her outside the ring, like all that stuff, I liked that. But the Nikki ASH gimmick just didn't work.
No.
And I'm also convinced that the ballyhoo that she was out there talking about, it was fed to her. So
I think they thought
maybe
they
I'm
were
wrong.
Gonna sell some like capes and masks to kids.
Capes.
She was a great.
Maybe I'm wrong.
She was a great part
of
Sanity too, because she would just like die like in those matches. But yeah, that's a tough one.
So the last thing that I have in the advice for indie guys is when it comes to your moveset, when it comes to your actual offense. First of all, yes, you have to know how to sell that sort of stuff. But the problem is that I have seen too many cases where it comes to guys wanting to put together their offensive moves and they just do stuff. Like there's not a cohesive progression or why do you do these things or why do they fit together. And you also especially especially don't want to be the guy that spams people on TV's finishers. Don't
Yeah.
be that asshole.
Also, don't be Silas Young, where you're Okay, so Silas Young is like a really great heel character. So Shad, the gimmick he had in Ring of Honor
Lot.
was he was the last real man.
Hmm.
He had a real good persona and stuff. But my problem with him, and it always killed me, is he'd do flippy flop stuff. And I'm like, no, you're the last real man. Like you should only leave your feet to do a drop kick. Like I know why he was doing it, because he was trying to give the audience what they wanted, but it didn't fit the gimmick. Like he was like, because he won the boys at one point, Shad, and then his thing was he was like toughening them up, and he'd have them like drink beer and stuff, and it was just some humor with it, but like he was a great character, but then he would lose me when he wrestled because he didn't wrestle like he should. Like, because that's kind of, I think, one of my problems is like, um, I think if you're an indie guy and you're learning, so I think there's some things you should consider doing. I think you should watch the shows you're wrestling on, take note of what guys are doing, what is getting over and what dies. Because here's the thing: I think you want to do different stuff than that's on the show, but you don't want to do the wrong stuff. Like if you're in like, let's say, Kentucky, and they're used to big old hillbillies like just beating the crap out of each other, like you probably don't want to go in and start doing like I'm Mr. Mat Work, because the crowd's gonna be like, this is not why we're here.
Yeah, you want to tailor to the crowd, but you want to find a way to do stuff in your own way. Um, okay, here example I've got for it. One thing that I did, I would do what and it wasn't even a big thing, but I would take and grab someone by the back of the neck, and I wasn't far, throw them into the turnbuckle. Then I'd grab him by the wrist, pull him out, whip it around, grab him by the back of the neck, and fling him back into the turnbuckle. I would do it as a series of 3. What am I doing? I'm putting his head in the turnbuckle. Everybody does that. But I built this little sequence out of me doing it just as a 1, 2, 3 that was different than what everybody else did. It was unique to what I did. And then that way, it wasn't, if it's something that's common to everybody, but you do it your own way, that's how you start standing out. Your spots and your style separate you in the small things, not just the big things.
Yeah, no, like if you're like in a like if let's say you're a
Wait,
bigger.
Matt, you've got to wait. Matt's got a real
Okay.
thoughtful look on his face.
I was just when the way you described that, because I haven't seen footage of you doing that. But when you say grabbed him by like his neck and like threw him into the turnbuckle, I just in my mind envisioned DJ Jazzy Jeff from Fresh Prince, where you just like grab it the turnbuckle. And now that's all I want to see, just you like chuck dudes in the back.
I think like it too, if like, so let's say you're a bigger guy and you're working in a promotion with smaller guys. Let's say the promotion's just a smaller guy promotion. Like
Well,
this.
since since Shad and I have met, uh, for those who paying attention, Shad's a bigger guy. He's not Kane. That's gotta be Kane. He's not Kane size, where he's like 7 feet tall, 300 something pounds. But you're like what, 6'1", 6'2",
6'3".
6'3"? Yeah, you're a big guy. Big guy. Like I can see, like especially in the modern era, where guys are a little bit smaller, like it would be absolutely believable. He probably had like 5 inches or so on a lot of guys. So
I was tall enough to get away with being able to choke slam people believably.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
But so like if so let's say you're a bigger guy and it's a smaller promotion that's aerial based. Like if you're a bigger guy, you probably shouldn't try to fly in that instance. Like you probably just want to go start chucking guys like lawn darts is probably what you want to do. Because you'll
Well,
stand out. Then you probably get heat because you're bullying all these small guys. But the other reason you don't want to try and fly is because you're bigger. It's probably not going to look as good. And it's probably going to be
there was
awkward and weird with the
there was
smaller
a
guys.
discussion. There was a discussion recently because the WWE returned to Scotland. Scotland, right? They had a
Yeah, they
show in
had
Scotland like the last couple weeks.
whatever that oh, what's it called? Something in the castle.
Clash at the Castle.
Clash at the
Yeah,
Castle.
yeah, Clash at
Yeah.
the Castle.
And it was wasn't it Damian Priest versus Drew McIntyre as
Yep.
like the main event?
Because they jobbed him again
And-
because
Yeah.
you know they're going to
Damian
keep drawing
Priest-
great crowds if they keep jobbing the guy they're there to see in the main event. But you know, whatever, they're idiot proof.
Damian and people actually there was a lot of hate about that. People got hot about that, which
Because
it's like, okay,
because
put
no
your money,
one
put your
cares
money where
about-
your mouth is.
Because no one cares about Damian Priest. That's the problem. Is he's one
But
of
put your money where your mouth is. Next time, like they come to Scotland, don't buy tickets.
yeah.
And you in your show like you're upset about what they've done.
The
but
problem
until
there
that
though
happens,
is
I don't
if
know.
you're a wrestling fan, that might be the only wrestling you get for the year live, and so you
That's the
kind of-
problem. That's what they can pull that BS where it's like they'll come once a year, if that. So it's like, oh, okay, well. But point is, like the point I was trying to make is that Damian Priest versus Drew McIntyre. Damian Priest is a bigger guy, right? He's like 6'5", 6'6".
Yeah,
He's leaner, so he's not like Kane sized, but he's a taller guy, well built, good. And he almost horrifically hurt himself because he did like a running like plancha or jump over the top rope, and his leg got caught in the ropes and to the point where he like fell down, but his leg was still trapped. And it's like you could have really like tore ligaments and everything in your knee and all that.
Drew,
thankfully-
it looked like Drew did a lot to mitigate that rotation.
Yes, and again, we're kind of down on the WWE, but we don't want anyone to get
No.
horribly injured.
if you're a bigger guy,
And I don't even want CM Punk to get injured. I just laugh when it happens because it's like
it's an
this is
inevitability.
kind of
But
karma.
if
Yeah,
you're a
it's kind of
bigger,
karma happened to you, but
if you're a bigger guy, do what Taker did.
yeah,
Don't do running planches. Just do what Taker did and chuck yourself over the side. And probably you shouldn't do
Yeah.
that because Taker was an underratedly like freak athlete like Sting was.
yeah. Not on the level of Sting, but I understand what you're saying.
But he was like, if you watch him when he was like a really young man, like he used to do rope walks like without like he used to do like rope walk like leg drops on guys and stuff and elbow drops. So he was like super athletic, but he got into the hip problems like really early. That's like what really
Yeah.
curtailed his, because like I think in like '99 he was having a lot of hip issues, which I think
Yeah.
that
but-
really hindered him.
But my point about using the Damian Priest example is like that kind of goes to your point. It's like that's a big dude. It's like you don't need to be doing that.
No.
You don't need to be doing like you don't need to act. You're 6'5", I think. I think he's like 6'5". Let's assume that.
That's a good place to go. Yeah.
You don't need to be doing jumps over the top rope like you're 5'10" and need to do that.
Just because
You have like
doesn't
7
mean you
inches
should.
off that. Yeah. Like
So
no. And this is like I understand you're doing it in maybe it's a big pay-per-view in the sense that you're main eventing when most people don't really give a shit about you. But it's also like this isn't Mania that you want to maybe break that out. Like don't do
Yeah.
that. Maybe once a year do that and do it at Mania.
Yeah, but-
if you are going to do that at all.
Problem is, like, you could end up like Lesnar though, where he went for the shooting star press on Mania and like landed on his head. I mean, he's lucky he didn't end up.
yeah, he really should have been practicing that one since it'd been so long since he'd done it.
Well, he didn't like doing it either. He had mentioned he.
Funny thing out of chat, Frank in chat actually brings up a good point as well, that Brad mentioned watching the other people's matches, and my go-to example for this is if you watch The Wrestler, the Mickey Rourke movie. When the guys are in the back talking, there's some guys who they're talking about laying out their match, and they go, "Are you guys working a leg? Oh, okay, we'll do something else." Talk to the other people who are doing matches to make sure you're not repeating spots, because whoever does it first, they're gonna be like, "Okay, did that," and everybody else who does a similar spot after that, they're gonna be like, "Oh, now everybody's doing it." Talk to each other and just say, "Hey, man, I want to try and make sure that, we're not stepping on each other's toes. I don't want to be like, accidentally stealing one of your big spots." And if you do that, first of all, you can cut down on having heat with the other boys, because you're like, "Hey, this guy had enough respect to come and talk to us and make sure that, we weren't." And if you come over and they're like, "No, man, we're doing the figure four in our match," it's like, "Okay, cool. We won't be doing that, but I'm using a cutter as my finish over here." And they're like, "Oh, if you're using a cutter as your finish, then we won't do that in ours." You can have this back and forth where, you're making a better show and working with each other and all you had to do was just talk to each other, before you went out there. But it's I don't know what the deal is with that. You get to the big leagues, I guess, they've got agents that make sure that doesn't happen. But if you're on the indies, that's up to you. You're the one that needs to make sure that you're playing nice with everybody. Sorry, killed the conversation again.
No.
Oh, I panicked to realize I was still muted. No, I think you should watch the other matches.
And you should also develop your connective tissue. You're going to have, what, maybe 3 or 4 big spots that are signature spots for you. You need to develop your connective tissue, the stuff that goes in between. Stuff that I developed, like that corner whip spot I mentioned. I did a Booker T style back elbow because I thought it was fun to do. Whenever they come off the ropes and I do the back elbow, I would spin off of the impact. Why? I just thought it was fun. It's not like it's my big spot or anything, but it was just something I did.
I think if you want to have fun with it too and really endear yourself to the guys around you, go to the main eventers and be like, "Hey, what's a big spot you're going to kick out of in the main event?" And if they're like, "Oh, well, he's going to do this," and then be like, "Okay," and then go to the guy you're wrestling like, "Hey, beat me with that." So that it means more later on in the show when someone else kicks out of it.
You might want to communicate that's what you're planning on doing, so they don't feel like you're stepping on your spot. But
Yeah, I feel like that's potentially problematic. But
if you say, "Hey, look, if you're kicking out of a superplex, but he beats me with a superplex earlier, then that's going to make you look even better kicking out of it. Are you cool with that?"
I think in context it can be important. Generally, to go back to the point from a minute ago, like and this happens with what I'll say is the big two, like AEW and WWE. This happens a lot too, where the same moves will happen.
Oh, all the time.
And it's like this should not. You should not do that.
Like there was an ROH house show I went to once where literally, I think 6 times that night, a guy did a dive on a guy in the exact same side of the ring in the exact same spot all night. And by the end of it, I'm just like, "Oh, look.
Another dive."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember the I'm sorry, Matt, go ahead.
No. I was just making a broader point where it's like, just don't use the same spots. Like if you've already seen 4 Canadian destroyers, just don't do it. I don't care if you plan to do that spot. Stop. Don't be like, "Oh, well, shit, can't do that one." Think of something else.
Well,
But
so
there's been some old NWA shows, like I think WCW in the late 80s. It would drive me nuts. I think a couple times on shows like really close together, they would do, and they did it like more than once on a couple shows, where they would do the suplex where both your shoulders are down and one guy like flips his arm up at the end. Like they overuse that finish a lot, and it's just like if you see that twice on the same show, it's just like, ugh.
Yeah. So Do you remember? I think this was like year one in AEW. There was the thing that went out there that said, "Hey, something went out and they said agents are going to help you set up your matches," and part of it was so that they didn't see repeated spots or they didn't see like people doing the same gimmick and that sort of stuff. And the thing that I noticed immediately after that is we went from seeing 4 Poison Ranas to 1 per show. I don't know if you guys remember that or not.
Yeah, no, that was yeah. I remember that.
I should not see more than one Poison Rana on a show.
I shouldn't even see
Like,
one per show. I'm
I
gonna be
I
honest.
get no, you shouldn't. But I mean, I guess conceptually, if you wanted to see more than one per show, it should be in the same match, like the same guys like doing it, trying to do it more than once. But I agree with you. It's like
Like it should
that's a
be.
level of move. It's like I shouldn't see like 12 burning hammers in a
It
show.
should
Like
be like it should
the
be like
real
where
burning hammer.
yeah, it should be like the
Like,
Poison Rana should be like where Bailey used that to murder Sasha and win the women's title, like, and you like it was a big like move that people hadn't really seen in relation to NXT. Like it should be stuff like that. And like the Burning Hammer should be going back to your Burning Hammer point of view. Like even when Kabashi was doing that, that wasn't an every match thing. Like the Burning
no,
Hammer was like the big.
What didn't he do a
if
grand
you
total of
actually,
7 ever?
I think it was more than that, but it was
I
like
think
maybe like a dozen.
I think he
Like in his
started doing it
career,
more. I think he started doing it more like when Noah was getting really self-masturbatory at the end.
maybe, but he still. It wasn't like he did it every match. Like he maybe like once a year. Like he pulled out the burning hammer. Maybe towards the end, like twice. But this is not a move he did like 100 times. He did it like a dozen times. Maybe it. I think someone counted not that long. I think it's under like 24 times he ever used the move. So this kind of goes to the point. It's like, dude, don't finish your spam. You're not a creator wrestler.
You look lame as
SmackDown versus
shit
Raw.
doing that. If
Yeah,
everything you do is somebody else's finish, you look lame as hell.
Yeah, it gives no context. And what are you supposed to beat them? It's like Seth Rollins is really bad about that. Like the superplex into the Falcon Arrow or what. I hate that move. I hate that move
Yeah.
so much.
Well, in the same vein, I hate Adam Cole doing the Panama Sunrise as a high spot.
Yeah.
I really hate the Canadian Destroyer being a high spot and not a protected finisher. But I also have to get into the other side of it because we actually had he was on the show as a guest years back. Alex Angel. It would every now and then bust out a spot that you would see on TV, but he would only do like one in a match. And the idea was these people see it, they know it, they'll react to it, right? And then this one useless lump of a vet started calling him Mr. As Seen on TV for doing that. And it was in basically Alex was smart enough to just blow him off. But you know, why did he borrow that one? Because it would excite people to see something they recognized. But he didn't do a stunner into a pedigree, into a spear, into a tombstone or anything like that. You know, he if I remember correctly, he did Edge's spear like the exact same way because the crowd would get up for it. But it was just one thing that he did, and it had the credibility pre-built.
Chikara
I mean,
had Thief Ant towards the end, and what Thief Ant did was he would steal people's finishers and use them on him. But the conceit there was, so he did a lot of finishers, but the conceit was, well, yeah, he's copying their move, but he doesn't have the years of practice in it, so he's actually not very good at using the move, so it's not as effective.
And that's a great, if you've got announcers on TV that can fill in that gap for you, great. But you also cannot reliably depend on the crowd picking up on something like that without having the announcers to help bridge that gap.
I also think it's a lost art form, but like it was actually an interesting gimmick to WrestleMania 1. Like, remember how Tito Santana won against the Executioner with the figure four leg lock? It's a real oddity because that wasn't his finisher. So what had happened there in the gimmick at the time was, so he had lost the Intercontinental title to Greg Valentine, and he lost it to the figure four leg lock. So what he was doing at the time is he was using that as his finish because he was learning to use the figure four leg lock so he could better combat it against Greg Valentine.
Wasn't something like that similar to when Rick Martel started using the Boston Crab as a finish?
It might have been, yeah.
I think he lost some big match to a Boston Crab, so he started using it himself or something like that.
Yeah. But I think that's an interesting conceit, is like stealing someone's finisher because you're trying to master.
You're trying to understand it. And yeah, I can see that. Again, though, that's subtle enough that if it's just live crowd without anyone to help drive the point home, that can be difficult.
Yeah. I think those are broad enough that you can get the point across. But like, I don't know, there's some stuff that's like way too inside baseball, I think, that guys get into.
Absolutely.
Just talking about this topic made me it gave me like PTSD from like the aughts when every guy in the Indies was basically pulling out a Shining Wizard because Muto was doing it and made it
Oh yeah.
popular back in the day.
And they're all doing the spinning.
I feel Adam Cole was doing like it still does like the
they're
Shining
they're
Wizard.
all doing the Elix Skipper finisher is like
The overdrive.
no the
Oh God, I hope
the
not.
spinning Uranage, like the one where you like put your foot on their head and kind of did like the spin thing. Like everyone was doing that. Everyone,
I don't know that move.
you would know it if you saw it. Everyone was doing it for a while.
Like the spinning Uranage?
Yeah. Sorry, I can't. I haven't heard the word in forever.
I'd have to see it because I'm having a hard time putting my finger on it.
Everyone was doing that for a while. Shining Wizard was really bad. There was a couple other ones that were real bad at the time.
I mean, let's be honest, super kicks are kind of bad.
The faux MMA stuff of the early 10s is really bad.
Yeah. Diving headbutts were really bad for a while too.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted to do a diving headbutt, and it's like, wow, especially what we know now.
You know what's funny is if someone went back to doing like all the suplex variations, they would probably be pretty novel now because people don't do like the T-bone suplex or like all the stuff Taz used to do. That stuff's kind of a lost art form.
It seems to me that they're kind of more spread out and diffused because I'll see someone uses an exploder over here, and I'll see someone uses a T-bone over here, or something like that, and I'm okay with that. Like I like that. And I also like that Roddy got away from every move. Roderick Strong, every move he does being a backbreaker. Like that shtick wore pretty thin.
I did like Shibata doing the walkaway spot and Joe laughing and pointing at him. That was
yeah, an homage is nice.
Everyone was doing the Kukina clutch like for a while there too.
Oh, God. Yeah, like for example, if the next time that we see Eric Rowan, Eric Redbeard, whichever, wrestle a match, if I see him start using a discus lariat as a finish, I am totally okay with that. Like, I have no problems with that whatsoever. If I see Bo Dallas, or I don't know if he's still using that, if I see him start using the Sister Abigail, not a problem. No problem whatsoever. Like, I am down with that. Because there's a personal connection in with that particular thing. And there's a fine line between you don't want to assume your fans are smart enough to get the small stuff you're doing, but you also don't want to assume they're too dumb. Because there are going to be some people who are going to be, well, why is he doing a discus lariat for? It's like, wow, you know what? You go sit in the corner. But then most folks will pick up on it.
You got to trust the audience to a degree.
To a degree, yes, but the bar is
And sometimes,
you got to find where the bar for where you're working is.
and honestly, sometimes people love to blame the audience. Sometimes the audience is not the problem. The problem is you're not communicating what you're trying to do to them. Because audiences, especially wrestling audiences, are a little bit forgiving. Like they tend to give you a little bit of room to breathe unless they're like a super smart crowd. But I feel like that's a lot better than it used to be. Like I feel like they're willing to give you a little bit of space to breathe there. But like if you can't get them, like it's a you problem. And I also feel like if you stick to something like simple, most of the people going to like an indie show in any part of the country has probably seen hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of hours of wrestling. And they have like a lot of, like, even if you're talking about like the markiest of mark fans at like an indie show, they still have a lot of wrestling like context to draw from. And if you're dying in front of those fans, like it's a you problem. Because if you're doing it in front of like the three of us and we're like, what the fuck is this guy doing? Like you've done something wrong because the three of like
one of the three of us should pick up on it.
yeah, because between all of us, like I mean, even on this show, like we've done like literally when after the show when with Beefy, he was like, where do you guys get all these clips? I'm like, a lot of it's on YouTube. But like I'll tell you a great one because we talked about it, and I was sad Shad wasn't here to talk about it. But watch the Lanny Poffo interview with Randy Savage where he's talking about how like rock and roll is degenerate filth and it's leading the youth of the country like astray. Like
Degenerate filth.
Like look at that because we were crapping on subversion, but like that was a super subversive.
It was played straight and yet still subverted. Like I'll watch those clips. I didn't know I wouldn't be here for the show until like day of,
like 2 hours before.
Yeah, but I loved that promo. Lanny was so good at it because he is playing this dickhead promo so well. But at the same time, like you guys said, Randy's going absolutely bonkers around him. And so it played both sides. And it was excellent.
And I also like that he used decadent filth, and I'm pretty sure he used fidelity in that promo too. I also think though, like, so the thing I think I would say is don't be basic bitch, but also you need to keep it simple, is what I would say with a lot of stuff.
You want to keep it simple. Don't be basic bitch, but also the best way that I'm going to say to stand out is find your own way to put a unique spin on common things. Find a way that how you do a specific thing is, and not a big thing. How you do a specific small thing is different than everybody else. Also, one last thing, never, ever, ever, you son of a bitch, ever first time a move during a match. Try it out before the match. Try it out before the show. Don't do that. Oh my God. I saw one of
the Ring Brother.
One of the worst examples I ever saw. This guy I was at the show with recorded it. And in the middle of this match, first of all, this guy's name was Jordan Hazard. And the name was appropriate because he was dangerous to be in the ring with. And he, what they did, bless you, what they did is they just
out of nowhere.
What they did is out of nowhere, this guy did a backbreaker, and Jordan Hazard was on the second rope, and he was going to drop an elbow on the guy who was still being held in the backbreaker position. He had never done that spot before.
The demolition finisher.
Maybe.
They put him in the backbreaker, and then he come off the top rope and hit him in the head with an elbow drop.
Yes.
Okay.
You know how I know Jordan hadn't done it before? Because he just landed his full body on the other two guys. He didn't drop the elbow on the other guy in a safe way. His dumb ass just landed on the other two.
Had he ever come off the top rope before?
He tried. He wasn't good at it. Like, there was a reason that we wouldn't train him. He showed up and did some training with us, and we're like, nah, dude,
That's a second rope spot, too. You don't go to the top rope to do that. You come off the middle rope.
He did it off the second.
Oh,
he
God.
still did that. All right? Like, I told him, I was like, no, no, I'm not working this guy. If I'm ever booked against this guy, then I'm pinning him to the mat and sitting on him for the whole match. I'm not doing this shit.
That's hilarious. I would say
I was
like
so damn mad.
I would say like so if you're new to the business, which I would say do is watch like I would say watch Jerry Lawler matches. Like you're not gonna have his charisma, but look at his economy of like everything.
Mm-hmm.
And like how he paces, works the crowd and stuff. I'd say don't watch Ric Flair because he's such a natural at it. Like he just makes everything work. Who are good? Dean Malenko, I think's a good one to watch. Waltman's a good one to watch.
Just for like general presence stuff.
General presence guys that were very confident, like Scott Hall, guys that just understood what they were doing. Like especially guys like Hall or Lawler that gave guys more than they necessarily had to.
I would say Hall and Lawler are really good for it. Lawler will also teach you a lot about non-verbally communicating to everybody. Because you could be looking at Lawler's back and have an idea of what was going on from how he would posture and move and that sort of stuff.
He's the master of like big movement.
This is a random name, possibly, but would you consider Jeff Jarrett?
I think Jeff would be a great person to watch because Jeff has fundamentals down so soundly that, okay, for whatever faults we might have for Jeff Jarrett, number one, I don't remember a case of Jeff Jarrett being seriously injured.
No.
And number two,
No, actually, I don't either. Yeah.
I have no recollection of anyone getting seriously hurt working a match with Jarrett.
No, and we've seen twice too. We've seen two matches on this show that he's been in. The one with Mongo at Bash at the Beach '97, and with Diesel on that Raw, where Mongo and Diesel did not do a lot, and it was a lot of Jeff Jarrett like just running around the ring and doing like everything and like pinballing big for them, and he's a really good example of like how to make your opponent look good.
So
I threw out Jarrett because mention of Lawler got me thinking of Memphis, and I feel like the show has really solidified this to me. I was never a hater of Jeff Jarrett. Some people are because I think they probably think that he got pushed higher than he should have been. Like they don't think he should have been like
if you
world
watch
title
Memphis
level.
If you watch Memphis though, they brought him up slow. They brought him up really slow, and I would say I would say just WCW was the only bad push he got. Like in TNA, I disagree with what they did with Raven, but I understand like what people don't understand, especially with him is the NWA champion, is the WWE was being super predatory, and anytime any like promotion got even an ounce of like a footing, they would sign their champions away. So like I understand the predicament they were in. And when people like remember that, it lasted like he was done as like being the champion after like the first 2-ish years. Maybe 2.5
Raven
years.
was the one person that he could have safely done that with because Raven was suing WWE at the time.
Like that was a misstep, but I mean, but I think generally like that's overstated with him to a degree. Like I think people just are still too in the moment with that.
Go ahead, man.
I don't have those feelings about Jarrett. I'm mentioning Jarrett just because again, a mention of Lawler got me thinking about Memphis and just in general. Like I actually we've seen a lot. We've actually seen a fair amount of Jarrett, like not a substantial amount of Jarrett, but we've seen like a decent amount of Jarrett, and I honestly feel like I can actually say I don't think there has been a time where he's been bad. He's not he's been consistently a good worker
No,
for like
there was a match I
30
showed.
years.
There was a match I showed Shad, and it was literally like, I think his third ever match, and Shad got pissed because he was so good in that like his third ever match. Shad was like, "Why is he
He
this
was
good? Like, I don't understand."
Jarrett has been good since almost the very beginning of his
Oh, like
career.
yeah, like
And he's people still hate on him today, but I don't know if it's residual, but people are arguing nowadays. It's like in the current era, the moment. Oh, why is Jeff Jarrett in the Owen Cup? And it's like, well,
because they were friends.
he's there to eat a pin. He's there to eat a pin. Number one, two, he actually has a reason. And they initially like sent AEW sent out like a small clip of why. Then they actually, I think on social media at least, they released like the 9-minute clip he did explaining his friendship and his history with Owen Hart, to the point where some people online are like, I want Jeff Jarrett to win the entire Owen Cup. Like that's how much they are emotionally invested in this,
They,
because he has a legit story.
I
But
think they
I'm
should have him
digressing. The point
win.
is like
They messed up not having Dax win the first one, in my opinion. I will
the
always stand
the problem
by
is that
Dax should have
they've
won.
like the problem is that they've already announced like the winner of the Owen Cup is going to wrestle them in for the title at Wembley.
Yeah.
You're not going to do like the
Yeah,
champion,
I know.
whoever it's going to be, either Swerve or Osprey against Jeff Jarrett.
I know.
Like that's not going to happen. But
that
but-
first Owen Hart, the winners, Martha Hart, she picked out the winners. That was her.
I know. It should have been Dax though, because they had a much stronger connection with like Bret Hart, and they should have been rewarded. I would also have rewarded Dax for the way they just mugged that guy that jumped Bret at the Hall of Fame weekend.
Yeah.
So I wanted to throw one other guy that I would recommend people watch with a slight caveat. I'm going to recommend that you watch Dustin Rhodes matches, but
Good one. That's
as Dustin Rhodes, not as Goldust, not as Black Rain or whatever the hell, because, and here's the thing, and you could probably get away with it in some Goldust stuff, but he was so committed into playing into that gimmick that you're gonna miss it. It would obscure what I'm talking about. Dustin Rhodes, as Dustin Rhodes, is so good at getting more mileage out of doing fewer moves than almost anybody that I can think of. Watch what Dustin does and why, and it's not just like, for example, Dustin doesn't, one of Dustin's big spots is you'll come off the ropes, he'll kick you in the gut, and what does he do? He drops to a knee and uppercuts you in the throat. Why is that so big, though? You come off the ropes, big knee to the gut, it's partially a subversion because you're expecting a big move, but then it's a big movement, it's loud because he drops to his knee on the mat, there's a big sound for it, he hits you, and then the guy goes from bent over to bumping all the way on his back. It makes that one punch look huge. Like, seriously, straight up, Dustin Rhodes should be on your list.
The timing of his comebacks too are very strong. I would say Book Dust is a good one to watch because his the timing of his comebacks is really on display in that tag team. And I would add one more wrestler, because now you have to pick a distinct portion of his career, but Mid-South Ted DiBiase.
That's specific almost to the podcast, just because we've seen some Mid-South Ted DiBiase, but I would agree, like I'm a fan of Ted DiBiase because I actually loved the $1 Million Man gimmick, but I do appreciate that this show has allowed us to actually see some of the pre-WWF Ted DiBiase, and we saw like just how good of a worker he was. Not that he was a bad worker in the WWF.
He was, but he didn't have to go all out anymore. And
obviously, like, because of the gimmick, because of the environment he was in, he didn't have to do certain things, and I appreciate that. Like, we've talked about this before. I've mentioned it before, but people hate on Hulk Hogan. It's like Hulk Hogan's actually, I objectively would say Hulk Hogan is a good worker.
Yeah.
You just don't see it all the
There's
time,
there's
especially
an
during his
interesting
run. Because go ahead.
clip. I think it's Shelton Benjamin. They're playing like movie clips of like wrestlers, and he's like breaking down if like they did a good job or not. And they play the Hulk Hogan and Stallone thing from Rocky 3, and he's pointing out all these things in like the the thing that Hogan's doing for him, like when they do the thing where he slams Hogan like over the top rope. He points out that Hogan posts for him and like puts his arm on his shoulder and stuff, and like all these little things, like professional, like mechanical things Hogan's doing that like make that scene work.
Yeah, Hogan was objectively a good worker,
Yeah,
and people, I this is like the evolution of a wrestling fan, like of a certain era. Like we're older, so we can kind of appreciate this. But the motion you go through, if you're at least like our generation or our age, kind of, you go from like, I love Hulk Hogan, I'm a Hulkamaniac, to you evolve. If you stay with wrestling, you evolve to be like Hulk Hogan, like, wow, what a shitty worker. Like, I love guys like Bret Hart and Ric Flair, etc.
yeah,
Like the the classical, like, great technical workers. But then you evolve and you come around to where we've seen enough wrestling,
yeah,
years and years of wrestling, to be like, oh my God, Hulk Hogan actually was a fantastic fucking worker,
yeah,
because of everything he would do. You can't hate on him necessarily because the environment he was in, he didn't have to do certain things to actually like make it work. Ted DiBiase, kind of in the same vein, when he got to WWF/WWE, he didn't have to do certain things. But I'm glad that we did see that his
but
pre WWF stuff, where he actually worked matches a different style, a different, he added more to it. I agree. Like he actually, a great worker that's studying him the entirety of his career, I would say, but certainly pre WWF, like that's a good example.
what I thought
Let me
was
go back
interesting
up.
about that was like the first question when we went to pre WWE, Shad was like, I don't know how I did
Yeah.
the loaded glove spot, and then we watched it, and Shad's like, oh, that's how. Like, it was like Shad saw like a light bulb and was like, oh my gosh, that's so brilliant.
Yeah.
I just couldn't conceptualize it before that, but it
Yeah.
was yeah, it was the right way to do it.
I have one more suggestion for someone starting out wrestling. So watch a lot of Jerry Lawler, and then when you're done with Jerry Lawler,
Oh,
fire up Eddie Gilbert, who was a Jerry Lawler mega fan, and watch a guy pull parts of like the gimmick off and like make it his own. If you want to watch the way not to do it, watch Terry Funk and then Dick Slater, and someone who's like, I mean, young Dick Slater is like pretty much even moves like exactly like Terry Funk does. He went a little too deep into it, but yeah, Eddie Gilbert's a great like look at someone who was like a fanboy that like ripped the act off and made it his own. Because then when we had watched more and I'd point some stuff out, like Matt and Shad were like, oh yeah, like he is like doing like Jerry Lawler.
yeah. Eddie Gilbert was great. Terry Funk, people should actually study too, just because Terry Funk is one of the best of all
Yeah.
time.
But you're
Uh,
never going to be able to be Terry Funk because he's just such a one of
no,
a kind.
you should study him. Like, if you're a fucking philosopher or want to go into philosophy, you should read like Socrates and Aristotle. So like you should read the greats before you start forming your own
Yeah.
ideology about things. But let me go back real quick. Like, Dustin Rose is a great example, because Dustin Rose is in his 50s now, still great.
And does
Is
not
Dustin
have his
Rose
original
gonna be
knees.
no, still great when he has had like both knees replaced. Like, still can work a match, still can evoke emotion,
I liked
like
his
still can
team
do
with Keith Lee.
spots. Oh, still can do spots that, again, you have to. This is almost like you're a gourmand Like you taste you specialize in food. You're not just like I love. Look, I myself I love a quarter pounder from McDonald's. I enjoy it. Is that the same as like a 5-star restaurant? The food you're gonna get at a 5-star restaurant, Michelin starred in your hometown? Like no, but you still kind of enjoy it. That's not Dustin Rhodes. Dustin Rhodes can give you like a delicious McDonald's meal that you appreciate with comfort, but he can also give you the Michelin starred gourmand. Like he can do things that after you have like had that much experience watching wrestling, he can do things like he just said mechanically that you can be like, oh, chef's kiss. That was done perfectly. Like the timing of that can only be done. You've been doing this for 30 plus years. The timing of this is impeccable. Like whenever I pop every single time I see a guy shoot to the ropes, he's coming in, Dustin Rhodes does that snap power slam.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's the Leo DiCaprio Once Upon a Time in LA. Like, I gotta I like pop, like point and hold my beer. I gotta like pop for that every single time because it is so perfect. It's impeccably timed.
Oh, we'd be
Dustin Rhodes is a great example. Like he's still timeless, even if you don't. Obviously, they're all of these recommendations. It's like you're not gonna rip the gimmick from these people, but it's like you can learn so many things from these people: timing, personality, just
working big,
work a crowd. Oh yeah, and Shad can speak of this better than anyone. Like there is a true art for the very best can know, and that's part of why there's many different aspects, but I will always say like Hulk Hogan is one of the best of all time, and not just people like I have a love-hate relationship with Dave Meltzer. Like I love him, he's a great guy. Sometimes I feel he gets so lost in the weeds, and he likes his very special
and
guys.
I would say once Dave is gone, like wrestling is never gonna have like wrestling will never be the same because they will never have such a trusted figure like in place like Meltzer. Like I think wrestling will just be
Dave Meltzer he is to the extent that wrestling has a living historian. No one fits that bill more than Dave Meltzer. And he's in his early to mid 60s, so I mean, I wish a long, long life to him, but you don't have like another 100 years of Dave Meltzer.
Yeah.
You have 20, 30 years maybe.
Well, and I would say you're not even gonna get that because there's gonna be a point where he retires or like he's just not as capable of like there's gonna be like mental decline and stuff. But I just think like you said, the historian and someone that you can trust as being as close to the truth as like humanly possible. Like I think
as best he is aware.
Yeah, because that's the other thing. Like with Cornette, like when Cornette talks about stuff, it's like I typically know if Cornette's talking about something he was involved in, he's telling the truth because he's sitting there reading it off a piece of paper because he literally wrote down everything that happened in his career. So like so Cornette like is typically honest. Meltzer because like you get things like you still have guys like perpetuating like the myth of like the Luger Brody cage match. When we have the footage, it's like, no, Luger just got sick of it and DQ'd the guy and just got the fuck out of there because he was done with it.
Yeah, Luger just got out.
Yeah, he wasn't afraid or anything. He was just like, well, okay, well, I'll just clock the ref. And get out of here because this is dumb.
Yeah.
Or like, there's another one that like gets bullshitted all the time. It's like, no, I've literally seen the footage and that's not what happened.
I think that I'm going to harken back to something Matt said, and maybe, just maybe, we ought to make an episode out of it, or maybe not, because we might have already talked these points to death individually. But if you're going to have a list of, you know, the classics, the Plato, the Socrates, the Aristotle, you know, those sorts of things for like Western philosophy or whatever, then I'm probably gonna have to say that if you want that for modern wrestling, because there's a sharp divide between it. Kind of Harley Race kind of bridges that era, but you're gonna have Hogan because he was the crowd work guy.
I would.
Like,
My line of demarcation is 1985 when JCP gets on TBS. I consider that the birth of the modern era, and
okay,
that's what I
so
refer to as modern wrestling when I talk about it.
so it's gonna be Hogan because frankly nobody worked a crowd like Hogan. It's gonna be Flair because nobody was a heel like Flair. It's gonna be Funk because nobody was able to adapt and change the way Funk did. Now, if it's Mount Rushmore, there's a fourth slot, and in my head, there's a few different ways that could go. Maybe Lawler, maybe somebody else, but I'd have to think about that one. But it's the idea that why are these regarded as some of the greats? Well, you need to watch and understand why they are, because there's a damn good reason for it.
And we have a shitload of footage of them too, so there's no reason to not.
Yeah.
Like I think like so my
Yeah.
Mount Rushmore would be like Hogan, Flair, Funk. See that fourth spot's hard because then you have like Austin maybe.
My question on that is going to be, what are you looking for in the fourth slot? Are you looking for someone who is different than the others, or someone who is almost as good at doing what one of the others did?
Brett maybe. The problem is like so Austin is a really big star, but Austin like I don't think people realize how much of that big run Austin was just on borrowed time because he never recovered from the Owen pile driver. Never recovered from it.
That's the crazy thing. Like Austin is legitimately one of the biggest wrestling stars of all times in terms of like drawing power and like money made. But if you look at his like, and that's including like time off for injury, like his actual run from like when he became Stone Cold Steve Austin to basically when his career was done, you're looking at like a 5 year period,
Yeah,
maybe. And that
six
in between
years.
that, it's like he's off for periods of that because he had the horrific neck injury. Five
Yeah,
years. And here we are in June of 2024, and we're only a little over 5 years of like AEW existing. So you're talking about a guy who it's like if like a guy has started with AEW like year one, like the first show, like his career would have already been done by now. And
that's
that's crazy.
I think this might
Like
warrant a full separate discussion
yeah.
sometime.
Because I think
But
tag teams would need their own Mount Rushmore. Because my tag team Mount Rushmore would be like the Rock and Roll Express, Midnight Express. Um, oh, who would go in the other two spots?
Road Warriors would go on there.
Yeah, Road Warriors. Probably Steiner's in the last spot. Because the thing is, like,
Probably.
people are
it's
gonna
actually
people are gonna jump towards the Hart Foundation. I like the Hart Foundation, but when you really watch the Hart Foundation, they're never in like a great position in that era to have like good matches. So they're always kind of a little disappointing because they just never have great opponents. And they're never like in a great situation to really like come through.
They're good, but a lot of the people they're working with can't hold up the other end.
And they're not like innovative. They didn't like change the landscape like
Yeah,
the Road
so
Warriors, the Rock and Rolls.
but yeah, that might be something that we need to set a different episode aside for. We've
Yeah.
been at this for a while, guys. I think we can probably put a fork in here. Um,
Yeah, I would say so.
so everybody out
probably
there,
could. If we're talking about Mount Rushmore, like that's difficult too because I almost I personally feel like I would delineate like guys from like the 80s, 90s between like the last like 20 years. Because we can just we talked about like favorite tag teams or best tag teams of all time. It's like, yeah, maybe I would put Rock and Roll, Midnight Express, but it's like where do you put like the Young Bucks or like the Lucha Brothers? It's like do they deserve to be considered? Like, yeah, they should, but how do you compare the two?
So I think the problem there is you got to give the Bucks. You got to go out 10 years and see what the Bucks mean.
Yeah.
You got to get away from recency bias.
Yeah.
That's the problem. So it's almost like Mount Rushmore. I would say I could do a Mount Rushmore, for example, greatest tag teams from guys who were tag teams like the 80s, 90s.
I think the Bucks would
But
have to be on there no matter what eventually because they
they for sure are the top 10 tag teams
because
of all time.
they were a large part of the indie boom, and like they got their shirts sold in
Yeah.
Hot Topic and got wrestling popular enough that they could legitimately open a new promotion. And I think Omega is going to be in there. I think regardless of what happens to Cody here, like his place in like the AEW beginning like can't be taken away from him. Like he was a very important part of that. And I think
For Cody specifically, I'd probably disagree with Meltzer because Meltzer has almost made it seem like, oh, he's a bigger ace or star than like John Cena ever was. And it's like, no, I don't. John Cena actually has like some cultural attache to him.
You can still put Cena
like
on
people
a
in the
show.
wider culture. People in the wider culture are at least aware who John Cena is. They don't know who the fuck Cody Rhodes is.
Well, and the other thing is like you can still put John Cena on a show today, and it's gonna sell like 3,000 tickets extra. Like I don't think Cody quite has that, but they're also.
I would agree with that. Like, and I would disagree with Meltzer that Cody's bigger than John Cena.
He's bigger than Roman Reigns was. I think he's been bigger than Roman Reigns was, but
we'll have to see how it plays out. I think
they're outright sabotaging him right now, though.
Well, that's a whole separate discussion. But I would say, like, to me, like, for if you want to consider aces of the WWF, WWE, it's Hogan, the modern era. Hogan, Savage, kind of.
No, Savage wasn't an ace. I think. I'm
just saying, like, guys who like they at least Vince tried his ace, but
I would
Savage,
I would say
kind of.
I'd say Savage
kind of
was
Warrior.
always 1B with Hogan. Warrior maybe. Then I would say.
I would agree.
Brett.
Saying, like,
Brett and Michaels.
Including guys who like they would Vince try. Hogan, Savage Warrior, kind of. Brett, Shawn, kind of. Austin, Rock for sure.
Yeah, Rock.
In the meantime, like guys like Kevin Nash, Diesel, kind of. And then it gets a weird era where it's like
it was Cena.
He tried it with Angle, Lesnar, but I would say the true aces: Hogan, Austin, Cena.
I would say Brett. Brett was successful enough that he can be considered a true ace. Because here's the thing: Michaels tanked business, but Brett was at worst, at Brett's absolute 100% worst, Brett was a net neutral to drawing, which is going to sound like a backhanded compliment when I say that, but like being a net neutral to drawing is not a bad thing as a champion. Like if you're a stable hand that they know they can put the belt on you for 6 months and business is just going to keep doing its thing, like you are a great champion because you might not bring those extra butts and seats, but hey, shit hits the wall, you can keep like the stable hand is like a good thing sometimes. And that's kind of what Brett was. And I think he drew like really well internationally on top of that. But like, so I think for Brett, he was successful enough that I think I would consider him in that ace. So it'd be, so for the history, it'd be Bruno, it'd be Pedro, it'd be Backlund, then Hogan, then Brett for a couple years, then Austin, then Rock. Well, we'll say Austin.
Rock was probably successful enough.
I don't think Rock ever had to stand on his 2 feet though. So I would say Austin, maybe Rock, Cena, and then
but I would say potentially Cody.
Yeah, potentially Cody. Now, I will say they are
Roman. It was supposed to be Roman, but I don't think that it actually has been Roman.
No. I will say they are trying to sabotage Cody right now, though, because they're really. If you want to talk about fumbling the ball, Cody as champion has been like, because like that's my big problem with what they're doing with Cody is he won the belt, and then you can immediately tell they're just waiting for Rock or Roman to come back because they don't have anyone else.
The money is in the chase for Cody, I feel.
No, I think you could have gotten some good stuff out of him as champion. They just Triple H just has no creativity and he doesn't know how to book faces.
The thing about people love,
and they wasted the title program with Lesnar last year. That would have been killer with the belt on the line.
This is where I will strongly disagree with Meltzer. Like Meltzer basically like shrugs his shoulders and be like, "Oh, the WWE is hottest as it's ever been."
No, it's
like they're making like hand over fist.
They're making really a lot of money, but the attendance is starting to dip again.
But he's arguing like because they're so hot, it's like they can do whatever they want to, and it's fine. It's like, well, it's not fine.
No.
But he basically makes it seem like, well, because they're making so much money, it's like it's all good. And I would argue it's like it's not all good. And I would also argue that Triple H, and I've said this before, but Triple H is both a better booker than Vince and a much, much, much worse booker. And by that I mean, is he more logical than Vince? Yes. He's more logical than Vince. Is he more exciting than Vince? No.
No.
Is he more dynamic than Vince? No.
Is he more creative than Vince?
No.
Does he have?
He tends to do things way, way, way longer than they should be. And I don't know if that's because he's just complacent or he's not as creative or what.
Does he have? He doesn't even have the vision that Vince has either.
No, it's everything right now is still the Bloodline story. The Bloodline storyline is still going on, and people online socially, because the WWE has like brainwashed a certain amount of fans, and it's like that's why they can get away with the shit they can get away with. But people are like, oh, like they can continue this Bloodline storyline for like years because they keep adding people. Like they've added more like Samoans, and they've added more like Tongans, like Pacific Islanders.
Just I guess they never
pretend it.
Yeah, you can tell these people weren't around for the NWO.
Yeah.
No, but they just keep adding, and it obviously the problem that's again the creative vacuum of Triple H of Paul is that they're just like killing time because I think the goal or the idea. Excuse me, the idea of the plan is Cody versus Rock at the next WrestleMania.
Yeah.
So they're just gonna have Cody somehow involved in the Bloodline storyline, and the Bloodline storyline continuing until Mania of next year. So like another like 10 months.
Yeah. So my warning to people and Meltzer saying they're so hot it doesn't matter. Well, like actually yes it does, because this is why I'm not debating how much money they're making, but they're going to hit a cold patch, and they're not owned.
Oh, eventually.
They're not. Yeah. They're not a man's life work anymore. They are owned essentially They essentially got turned over to a private equity firm, a couple months ago. So here's the thing: if you're a fan of WWE, if they get sold again, it's going to get bad real quick. That's what I'm going to say. If they get cold, like in TKO or whatever that thing that owns them now decides to sell them, that's where it gets bad. Mm-hmm. And that can happen real easily, because when you say they're essentially saying it's too big to fail. And we've seen numerous companies that were massive fall off real quick. So that is going to be it for the night, because I think we're all falling asleep standing up. So next week we're doing the worst person to hold each world title.
Not including, in theory, non-wrestling.
Yeah, not including non-wrestlers. So no Vince Russo, no David Arquette, no Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
So all right, so everybody, thank you for being with us for this episode. Whether you watched us live, listen to us later, we appreciate you very much. This is Shad with Matt and Brad. We've been in 3 Corners. You're in the 4th, and we'll see you next time.